Good morning. Welcome to Yin. So today, grab what you have. I'll always give you alternatives if you don't have anything, because I realize that some of you are fitting this in from wherever you are, and yoga props may not be an option. If you do have a block or two, that could be nice, or something that's like this shape. Same thing with bolsters. Blanket. If you have a yoga bolster, great. If you don't, bed pillows work really nicely. Folded bath towels are really nice in place of a blanket like this because it just has a little bit more shape to it. And you can always stack those too, beach towels, whatever it is. So let's start today on our mat, and we'll start with a supported bridge pose, which means something needs to go underneath the hips. If you have a block, great. I know some of you don't, so you can always use a pillow or a bolster instead, and that'll still work. So whatever you're using, set it off to the side of the mat. Come on down onto your back, resting the head on the mat, and you walk the feet in. So soles of the feet are on the mat. Right now, we're not using any props. Arms down by the sides, close the eyes, take a deep breath in through the nose. Back out through the nose. This time, big breath in through the nose, fill all the way up. Exhale out of the mouth, let it go. Cleansing breaths. 2 more like that. Big breath in. Exhale, let it go out of the mouth. You're just clearing space for your practice. Big breath in. Sigh it out, let it go. This time, big breath in, same like you did before. Slow breath out through the nose. Keep going. Ujjayi breath. Deep breath in. Slowly let the air out. So as you continue on your own, you really want to maximize that exhale. So you want it to be at least as long as the inhale. And when you make them even, that's a nice way to reset the nervous system. If you're coming into this practice and you're feeling like you really need to calm down, try making the exhale longer than the inhale. And that'll bring you to a more balanced state. And what's nice about Yin is we hold these poses longer, so you have tons of time to figure out the breath, play with it, experiment with it. And it gives some of you something to do if you need that. All right, so we'll start to transition into supported bridge. So whatever you have is next to the hips, press into the feet, lift the hips up, slide whatever you have underneath the hips. So that's the only thing that's lifted. And if you have a block, go for the lowest height or the medium height. I wouldn't go for the tallest height right out of the gate. And if you have a pillow underneath you and you're feeling like this is really low, don't worry. You're here for a little bit. You'll be surprised at the height. And if you don't have anything to put underneath the hips, just skip it. It's not a big deal. Stay where we were. And you will all bring left hand to the heart, right hand to the belly, just so you can get that feedback from the breath a couple of times, taking a deeper breath in through the nose, back out through the nose. One more. So if you're lower to the ground, it'll feel nice to keep the hands here. If the hips are up a little higher, you could bring the arms right back down to the side and then just keep playing with the torso as you inhale and exhale, lifting it on the inhale, belly and chest, and on the exhale, bringing it back down. And if the hips are up higher, tailbones pointing up between the knees, so you keep that space in the lower back. Lengthening the tops of the thighs away from you. Chest is lifted if there's something underneath the hips, which might mean that the outer upper arms come in a little closer to the body and they press down into the mat. The shoulder blades is what lifts and spreads the chest, but remember you're keeping it gentle and easy. So try not to put too much effort into the pose. It's the stillness that helps us understand more about ourselves. We can change our perspective more to an observer of what's happening within the body, within the mind, stepping outside of ourselves and looking in. And you just take a peek. You're not passing any judgment. It's more meditative. So we let go of any fussing, fidgeting, or try our best not to do that as much. If you have the hips propped up on something, press into the feet to lift the hips up and slide that out from underneath you. Just set it down onto the mat and bring the hips back down to the mat. So we all have the hips down to the mat, soles of the feet on the mat. Bring the knees together and the feet wide. So knees touch, feet are wide. And feet wide means wider than hip width distance, as wide as you need to go to get the knees to touch. That just brings a little space to the lower back, which feels good even if you didn't have the hips propped up. And then we'll heel toe the feet back to hip width distance. Roll over to one side. Use the hands to bring yourself up to seated, and we'll come forward to hands and knees. So as you come forward to hands and knees, if your knees are sensitive, good idea to grab something and put it underneath the knees for extra padding. Or if you're using a mat, you can just double up the mat. That'll be nice too. And if you don't feel like you have any sensitivity there, then you can completely skip this part and it's not a big deal. But just telling you, we'll be on the knees, so grab padding if you want it. If you do have a couple of blocks, bring those nearby on the tallest height, and toes are tucked underneath you to bring the heels up a little higher. If you have blocks, put one block outside of the ankle, so the feet are going behind the block. They're not next to the feet, but they're more by the ankle or calf. One on each side, tallest height. You may not even need them. They're just there in case. And then from here, bring the hands to the lower back. So I'll show you what it looks like from this angle. So fingertips can point down. Some of you might be really open in the forearms and wrists. If you feel like it's not too much of a stretch, you could bring the fingertips up. It's definitely too big of a stretch for me. I'm doing fingertips down, but giving you all options so you find where you need to be. So hips are right over the knees. Hands are supporting the lower back. Tailbone's pointing down. It's not pointing back behind you. You want to keep the lower back long. And all we're doing, hug those outer elbows in, lift and spread the chest. You can stay looking forward to start so you can feel all that length in the back side of the neck. So we're in a similar shape to where we were with the back down on the mat. We're just changing it a little bit. And this can be a little bit more intense. Feel that width across the chest. You could look up, but keep the length in the backside of the neck. So a lot of times people want to crank their head all the way back, and that takes away that space. If you looked up, start to bring the gaze forward and slowly bring the head right over the hips. untuck the toes, tops of the feet down, and we just come back to seated on the heels, resting the hands on the thighs. So if you started out with a back bend, first with the hips lifted, we're coming back into another one. And if you skip that back bend, then you just take it easy on these camel poses, which is a part of yin. It's a pretty big pose for yin. All right, we're coming back in. So knees are hip width distance apart, so they're not touching. Tuck the toes, hands to the lower back, either fingertips down or fingertips up. You hug those outer elbows in and you already start to feel the back bend, the width across the chest. Thighs are strong. Try to keep the hips over the knees. And then maybe you lean back a little bit more. Maybe you stay right where you were before. We're not holding these as long, but we are staying with our steady breath. Gaze can be forward to start, so you feel that length in the back of the neck. Keep the length in the back of the neck. Maybe you look up. Just don't crank the head all the way back. You want to keep the spine long from the tail up through the crown of the head. Breath is even. Slowly start to make your way back up, using the hands to get there. Untuck the toes, sit back onto the heels, and you rest. Hands on the thighs, close the eyes, go back inside. Notice what's changed inside of you. Heart rate maybe picked up, maybe a little bit more energy coming into the body with this back bend. And then notice if there's any sensation in the lower back. Did we take it too far? All right, last one. So come back up onto the knees. Make sure they're separated, hip width distance apart. Tuck the toes, hands to the lower back, either fingertips down or fingertips up if that's feeling okay. Elbows hug in toward one another. Start to lift and spread the chest. Keep the gaze forward. If you feel like you want to go further, you could try bringing the hands to the blocks. If you're good here, stay here. Remember, we want to bring some ease into our practice, even though yin is fairly intense. It gets deep into the body and really changes things, hopefully creating a whole lot of space and freedom all over. Slowly bring yourself back up. And then this time, if you have anything off to the side, set those down. And if the mat's folded, unfold it so it's back to its regular shape. And we'll take child's pose as a counter, but try it with the knees together and the feet together. Sit the hips back, forehead comes down to the mat if it touches, and arms go back behind you. So feeling some rounding of the spine. And if the knees don't like this, try a more traditional child's pose with the big toes together and the knees apart. And then it's much easier to lift the hips up as high as you need to quiet down the knees. Arms would go forward for this one for support. But if knees and feet together with the hips back works, try that one. You feel the spreading of the lower back. And the thighs are there for support. So the torso is completely supported. Bring the hands to the mat, lifting the head. Feet come over to one side, and now we are coming to seated on the mat. So legs extended out in front of you. Bring the right foot in. Step the right foot over the left leg. And maybe you stay right here. You can always stay right here. If it feels okay, you can grab the outer right ankle and move it out to the side, working towards stacked knees. Maybe you stay here. Some of you will be comfortable bending the bottom leg and the feet go out to the sides, or they can come into the body, see which one's more comfortable, but you want to make sure that you're on both hips. So if you're leaning way over to the left, see if you can even it out. Another option, you can sit on a block and do the same pose, or bolster, blanket, whatever you have. All right, so from here, we're coming into a twist. You can rest this left forearm on the top thigh, Right hand comes back to the side, maybe behind you. It's an easy twist. So stay away from your edge. Make sure you're pressing into both sit bones though, so you have that foundation. And don't go all the way in. So see if you can just go part of the way in. Maybe the eyes close. Coming from those back bends straight into the twist to release them. Getting into the spine right away. You'll start to bring the gaze back forward, unwind the torso, keep the legs the same if you're comfortable here. Otherwise, you can extend the bottom leg. Walk the hands forward and you'll start to come into the hip opening. Go slow. It's our first one. Just let the head and the neck go. See if it feels okay to put weight on the hips this way. And if it's not working, you can keep the head upright with the arms out by the sides. You could extend the bottom leg forward and just do half shoelace. And if all that's not working, right sole the foot inside the left leg, and then you can fold forward here if that's working. So choosing one of those options, always taking this at your own pace and listening to your body. We're all so different. Giving yourself room to fall deeper into the pose. So try not to go all the way in. Forward folds can be a little easier for some of us to naturally fall deeper into the pose, and it feels good. So give yourself that space. And if the mat feels like it's far away for the hands, another good way to use the blocks is bringing them underneath the hands at whatever height makes the most sense. We'll start to walk the hands back in, bringing the chest over the hips, hands out to the side. You'll lean back, extend the bottom leg if it's bent, then the top leg, and then widen the feet, wider than hip width distance. Keep the feet wide, and you'll just move the knees side to side like windshield wipers. We were there for a little bit. So we want to release the hips before we transition over to the other side. We'll do the same thing. Keep things even. So extend the legs out in front of you. Make sure you're even on the hips. That might mean lifting yourself up a tiny bit and then setting yourself back down. Left foot comes in. Step the left foot over the right leg. Grab onto the outer left ankle and move it out to the side. Doesn't have to be perfect. Maybe you shift over to the right hip and bend the right leg underneath you. See how this works on this side. And then find where the feet are. See if you want them to be more wide or in closer to the body. Hips are both down evenly on the mat. And we'll start with that twist. So right forearm can rest on this thigh, and then figure out where the left hand needs to be to keep it gentle. So the farther back you go, the more intense it is. So that left hand can keep you a little bit more honest and away from your edge. Then sit up tall, close the eyes if that's comfortable, and enjoy the twist. Feeling it work its way through you. And we'll start to unwind, bringing the chest back forward. Sit up tall. Notice how the hips feel. If they feel good here and you have enough of a hip opening, stay here. Otherwise, you could start to walk the hands forward and go part of the way. So keep it easy to begin. You're here for a little bit, plenty of time to fall deeper into the pose. Close the eyes if you're comfortable with that. Rounding of the spine is okay here. And we'll start to bring the head back up using the hands, walk them back in toward the body. Bring the hands back behind you, lean back, extend the bottom leg, then the top leg. And then as you have the hands back behind you, widen the feet, wider than hip width distance, bending the knees, and then just bring the knees side to side, keeping the feet wide, shaking that off a little bit. And then we'll come to hands and knees. So back to tabletop. Let's do a few rounds of cat-cow breath, just as a counter pose, getting back into the spine. So as you reach the heart forward, hug the belly in a little bit. And on the exhale, round the spine, chin in toward the chest. So you go at your own pace. Slower is probably better, but you're linking the breath with the movement. So keeping those inhales long and as long as the exhales as you go back and forth. And seeing if you can move the whole spine. And do one more round, forward and back. Back to a neutral spine. So if you have a pillow or a bolster or folded towels, grab those and you'll bring that on your mat the wide way in front of you. You're coming back to all fours. And the bolster is about halfway centered in the mat, wide, or the pillow. And then from here, the right foot will step forward, which is a little awkward to get into because now you need to step over whatever you have underneath you, which is the bolster or the blanket. And the legs are hip width distance apart. You're going to stay low for this one. So you could rest the chest on top of the thigh. If you want to go a little deeper, you can get the right side of the torso inside of the right thigh. But remember, it's yin. So we're taking it easy. Don't go too far, too fast. The bolster or whatever you have underneath you is all the way up against that left thigh. So make sure the top of the left thigh is all the way up against it. Chest is reaching forward. I have my fingertips on the mat. That feels good to me. You could have hands on the mat. You could have blank blocks underneath the hands if you want to come up a little bit higher. But we're coming into, so these are lunges, but in yin, we call them dragons. So this is low flying dragon. Chest is low, close to the thigh. So try not to lift up too much, but you are getting into the hips. So hips are sinking down a little bit in a gentle way. And then we'll start to walk the hands up. So one hand at a time up to this front thigh. And you just start to peel the chest away from the thigh, lifting the chest. You can keep the hands on the thigh. Hips can go forward a little bit. Chest is lifted, head is lifted. So this is high flying dragons. You're still in a lunge. We're just moving the upper body around, changing things. And we'll add a shoulder opening, which may challenge your balance a little bit. So make sure you're scissoring those inner thighs and you have some weight in that front heel, the right heel. Reach the arms all the way up. Bend the left elbow like you're reaching down the center of the back, and then grab for the right elbow with the right hand, lifting the chest, getting as long as you can in the sides of the waist, and then bring it all over to the right. So keep that right foot down on the mat, getting into that left side body. Gaze can be forward or down. Just try not to let the chest collapse too much. Then slowly come back to center with the torso, reach the arms all the way back up, Hands slowly come back down to the mat, fingertips down to the mat, or hands, you're back in that low flying dragon. So chest can rest on the thigh or inside the thigh, right side of the torso, inside the right thigh. Chest is still reaching forward, left thigh is going back. And it should feel a little different now that we've been in it for a few minutes. All right, right hand inside the right foot, and then heel toe this right foot out. So it's wider than hip width distance, just a wide lunge. Blocks could be nice here, or you could use whatever you're using, the bolster or the pillow if you want a little bit more height, but start with this. So hands underneath the shoulders, lifting the chest, you'll feel that hip opening right away. If you feel like you want to go a little bit lower, you could use blocks at the tallest height, just stacked in front of you. You can try the forearms down to the blocks, and that's a tiny bit lower. Blocks have another height, medium height. You could put the blocks on the medium height. I have mine all the way together, so I have a bigger base. You could try that and see if that's your space. If you want to go lower than that, then that's when maybe you'd use the bolster or the pillow, whatever you're using. You can bring that in front of you and bring the forearms there. Some of you might be able to get the forearms all the way down to the mat, only if that feels gentle in your body. So be honest with yourself. And even right now, if you feel like, okay, I've already been here for a little bit and it's becoming too intense, then you just lift up wherever you are back to a place where it feels gentle. A cup of tea is something that I find personally very comforting. So many different types of tea. They steep for a different amount of time. Sometimes even the temperature of the water can be different, boiling versus not boiling, or whatever temperature it is. But the steeping of the tea is key, right? Because that ends up being how strong the flavor is in the tea at the end of that steeping time. And it's the same thing with these poses. We need to steep in them for a little bit so we can find that space in whatever area of the body that we're working. Right now, the hips, pretty intense. Keep the eyes closed. Make sure you're breathing. And if you don't find comfort with the eyes closed, that's fine. Just look down so that the eyes aren't all the way open, and try to keep the eyes still. And if you're not already, come back up onto the hands. If you have any props under the chest, just set those off to the side. Right hand inside the right foot will probably be an easier transition. So shift the hips back a little bit and get that right knee back underneath you. So you're back in tabletop. And we'll switch sides. So left foot comes forward, up between the hands. And then we're starting with this low flying dragon. So you can keep the hands down, maybe on fingertips, although the hips might be more open on this side. So maybe you keep the hands all the way down, or you could even use blocks. But we'll start here, not for very long, just enough to introduce the pose. If you have that blanket or the bolster, it goes all the way up against that right thigh. It's the tiniest bit of support that makes a big difference if you have something. If you don't, it's not a big deal. You're still in the pose. But it is nice to see all these little touch points that help soothe and calm us. Then one hand at a time up to this front thigh. You're starting to push the chest away from the thigh. Lifting the chest up. Hands can stay on this front thigh to start. Back toes can be tucked or untucked. That's a stability thing. So if you feel like one feels a lot better, choose that. Or a comfort thing. Sometimes people have a hard time tucking the toes or resting the top of the foot down. Dig into that left heel, find a little bit of scissoring with the inner thighs so you feel comfortable reaching the arms all the way up. And then bend the right elbow this time, grab for the right elbow, lift the chest, keep the belly hugging in a little bit, and then take all this length over to the left. So get that right side of the body pretty long. Staying away from your edge, still breathing in and out through the nose, up and down the back of the throat. Back through to center, reach the arms all the way up. Hands come back down to the mat for a low flying dragon. So fingertips, blocks, maybe the chest comes down a little lower. Maybe the palms are flat down. Here for the last few breaths. And you can get a little heavier in the hips as they start to open. Then here's what we'll widen the stance. So heel toe this left foot out to the left hand inside of the foot. And how you know the foot's wide enough, you want the hands in front of the shoulders and that left foot outside of the left hand. So that's about as wide as we should be. Then if you liked having the props underneath you, you can grab them. And if you don't have props, it's not a big deal. I'll start with the hands down on the mat or fingertips if palms down is too low, reaching the heart forward. And here you're already in your wide lizard lunge. You can stay here, breathe into it. If you feel like the chest is up too high, lower it a little bit, but remember you're here for quite a bit. So you want this to be easy, especially right now, because it's going to get deeper the longer we hold it, and definitely more intense the longer we hold it. So think about that cup of tea and where you need it at the end of the few minutes. And adjusting for side to side. So if you know this side, this hip is tighter or more open, you can definitely adjust for that, and you should. And if you don't know, this is a great way to learn and figure that out. And maybe you're totally even, and that's wonderful too. Either eyes closed or looking down at one spot. So you can feel the eyelids be heavy. In yoga philosophy, there's something called prana, which is life force. And that's something you can see when you look at someone else behind their eyes, how much life force is coming behind their eyes. Sometimes you can see vibrant energy. Sometimes you can see sadness. There's so many different things you can see. But right now, if you were to look at yourself, you want to see calmness, peacefulness, and a deep sense of self. You probably hardly ever think about it, but it would be interesting to think about what you're showing to the world with your eyes. And use that to help support other people, love them the way they need to be loved. Okay, coming back up onto the hands. If you lowered down, take your time. If you went way down low, you don't need to transition too fast. Setting props off to the side, and you'll bring that left knee back behind you. If there's a bolster or pillow underneath you, leave it there, and you'll just come forward. So hips will land on the bolster or the pillow or blanket, whatever you have underneath you, but belly is free. So you don't want the belly resting on that. And then you can just make a pillow with the hands and rest the head down on the hands. So hips are lifted, just as slightly lifted. It's not real high. Feet are relaxed back behind you, and you're just resting here after all that work in the hips. So this is our counter pose, which is a slight back bend with the hips lifted. So you'll come back up to hands and knees, just to transition. Slide whatever's underneath you off to the side. Leave it there. Come back down onto your stomach. So now you're lying flat. It should feel pretty good to have the legs back behind you like this. And we'll just open up the upper body so we can leave the legs like this. So left arm out to the side, left hand in line with the shoulder. Then you can turn the head the opposite direction. So you're looking to the right. Right hand is right underneath the shoulder, and then rest that left side of the head down onto the mat. Bring the feet all the way together. So it's like you have one leg, and then push into the right hand to roll back onto the left shoulder. So we're focused on opening up the upper body. Legs are straight. Don't step the right foot back. Keep the head resting down on the mat if it touches. If it doesn't, good idea to use a pillow or something so you can relax the head. It doesn't, in the neck, it doesn't need to work here. And that right hand is your gas pedal and your brake. So you can press into the right hand to find that nice stretch on the left side shoulder, chest area. Keep the tailbone going down toward the heels if you feel like it's sticking back behind you instead. And start to send the breath to the right side shoulder, chest area. And if it feels good, stay where you are. If it's becoming too much, you just lean forward into the mat a little bit until you ease up enough. You'll start to roll back onto your stomach. Make a pillow with the hands. Just rest here, forehead on top of the hands. Feeling the difference in one side of the body compared to the other before we switch sides. So as you switch sides, lifting the head, bring the right arm out to the side, right hand in line with the shoulder, left hand underneath the left side chest. Look toward the left, resting the right side of the head down on the mat, feet all the way together, legs together, and then start to press into that right hand to roll, left hand to roll back onto the right shoulder. And then see where you can soften and relax. Plenty of time to explore. So you don't need to go very deep to start. Tail's pointing toward the heel, so you keep that lower back long. And breathe into the right side, shoulder, chest area, giving it some love. And you'll start to roll back onto your stomach. Make a pillow with the hands. Rest the head down onto the hands. Feeling the upper body a little bit more open and staying in a little bit of an upper body opening even here as we rest. You'll start to lift the head, bring the hands in, making your way back up to hands and knees. And you'll come to seated on your mat, legs extended out in front of you. And we'll come down for Savasana. So you could use a pillow underneath the head. You could put it underneath the knees. That's always a nice way to do Savasana. And you can skip props altogether and not use any props. You're also welcome to take a seated meditation if you'd like to do that instead of Savasana, especially if you're short on time. Or you could do your meditation after your practice. That's always nice too. And if meditation is a goal down the road, that's also okay. The eyes closed, take a deeper breath in through the nose. Sigh it out the mouth, let it go. Body goes back to breathing on its own. And you fall back into stillness. You'll stay still, but just start to deepen the breath in and out through the nose. Left hand on the heart, right hand on the belly. If you're lying down or even seated in your meditation, keep breathing. Sending loving energy through the palms of the hands back into the body. Being grateful it's gotten you this far. Reach the arms overhead if you're on your back, finding a stretch out through the legs, up through the fingertips. And you'll roll over to your right side, bending the legs, cradling the head and the arm, or staying on the pillow if you have it underneath the head. That works too. Using the left hand, press yourself up to seated if you're not there already. You could sit on the blanket, bolster, pillow if you have one. Coming into your meditation seat, whatever that is, it's a comfortable seat for you. Sitting up tall with the eyes closed, bringing the hands together, maintaining the lift of the chest. You start to bow the head, taking a moment to honor and acknowledge your heart and your spirit, bringing it all back together, as well as everyone around you. Bring the head back up, blink open the eyes. Namaste. Thank you. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. See you next time.